In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Loving and gracious God, we just thank you for Father Nestor's continued presence among us and for our connection to the life-giving and life-saving work that's being done at the Inuka Rehabilitation Hospital. It's been such a grace and joy to welcome him back for another visit. And we just thank you for the efforts of so many people who support what's being done in Inuka. We thank you so very much for our filmmakers today, for their generosity and their response to do this project. And we just pray that you may guide our conversation this day. May it serve our efforts, and may it always be for your greater glory and honor. And we pray all this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
So I had the opportunity of serving at the Cathedral of St. Raymond in Joliet for 13 years. And while I was there, I had the beautiful grace of meeting the Spezia family, Lori Spezia being the matriarch of that family. And Father Nestor knows Lori. But I came to know Lori and the Spezia family because while I was at the cathedral, they asked me whether I would be open to having a priest live at the cathedral from Malawi. And so Father Eliseo was the first priest to move into St. Raymond's Rectory, and he was pursuing his MBA at Lewis University. And after Father Eliseo went back to Malawi, then Father Benedict arrived, and Father Benedict lived with me for the duration of my time at St. Ray's, and he was working on his master's in education and then eventually his doctorate in education to go back and serve in Malawi. So I just had a wonderful experience living with these priests and learning about their culture and the church in Malawi. And so in June of 2018, I was transferred to Saints Peter and Paul in Naperville. And I wasn't at Saints Peter and Paul any more than 4 to 6 weeks when Lori Spezia called me and she said, "I've got a priest friend from Tanzania that I want you to meet." And so she said, "I just would like you to take him out to dinner. He's been living at these villas at Benedictine University with the Benedictine sisters, so supportive of him. But he lives by himself. He's taking classes. He's away from his country. He's away from his family. He's away from his diocese. And he just would benefit from some community. So could you take him out to dinner and maybe consider having him come live with you at Saints Peter and Paul if that's possible?" So Father Nestor and I gathered one evening for dinner, and we hit it off immediately. I just responded to this man's warmth and sincerity. And I also applaud him, what he had done at that point, to be in our country and in our diocese for 18 months, and to be away from everyone, his family, his church, his country. I never would have survived. I just wouldn't. So I was more than happy to invite him to come live at Saints Peter and Paul. And he was ready to do it the next day, but we had to prepare for that. We had to get a car and just to make it the commute back and forth to school possible. And so probably 4 or 6 weeks later, he moved into Saints Peter and Paul Rectory. And the beautiful thing was he was taking classes at Benedictine, but he would help us with a couple daily masses during the week, certainly a Sunday Mass on the weekend, and with confessions. But most importantly, he immersed himself in the life of the community. And soon he started touching the lives of so many parishioners, as well as the priests of the parish. And we eventually entered into COVID and somewhere along the way, and that allowed us to go much deeper in our relationship and our sense of community as priests. And I had the opportunity to live with Father Nestor for 2.5 years. And when he left to return to Tanzania in January of 2021, I had formed a friendship for life, a real brother. And it was a real gift. And I remember before he went back to Tanzania, I told him that I would come for a visit, which was really of God and of the Spirit, because the last time I like creature comforts, and the The last time I went camping, I actually left the tent and went and slept in the car because I found the tent so uncomfortable. So and I don't like to fly, and it was a 20-hour flight to Tanzania. So I had all these things that could prevent me from going, but I have such a affection for Father Nestor as a priest, and the work that he's doing there is just amazing. And so my admiration had to override everything. And so I stepped out of my comfort zone and traveled to Tanzania in February of 2022.
Yeah, so I think it was when I received his call for the first time, and he was asking if I wanted to go out for dinner. That was amazing in itself. But of course, Lori had already told me that I should expect a call from a priest. So he came, I wasn't driving, so he came to the house and picked me up. Didn't know where we were going, but I just was hopeful that I would at some point be in a community. So we went out for dinner, and that was very nice, and he asked me questions like your visa, any documents that you have. Like, we shared all the information. And then he said, maybe I need to check with the diocese and be sure what to do. But then he asked, when do you want to come? And you know, my answer would be like, even now.
Yeah.
Even now. And so, yeah. So we kicked off after that. And then I moved into the rectory and saw the priests playing all the games. And it was just fun. It was just fun. And I don't think I will ever forget that. The way he took me and the brother priests in the community, it was very good. And always very, very, very touching. And then I started celebrating the sacraments and going to the Fishers of Men. And I think in terms of the community taking me, you remember Father Brad, one time you were asking, why are you not asking for the fuel? It's a long time. So I would go into confession. I sit there. I think this was the year of the COVID time. And I don't know this woman, but she would always take a hand out and give me $20 and say, this is for your fuel. Next month again, this is for your fuel. And she could do that so I didn't have to go back to him because I was like, okay, this is somebody's prayer, you know? So then I wasn't coming. I would pass by the filling station and put in. And then one day he comes and says, for a long time you have not taken, your
right.
fuel. Where do you get the fuel? Like, this woman is giving me. And so the community loved me that much, and that was overwhelming. And as you remember, my mom, whenever I talked to her, somebody went home and there was a smartphone and we could talk, and she would say, do you eat? Who is taking care of you? Are the people nice to you? So all those kind of questions. And I would always tell her, look, now I live with priests and they take very good care of me. And she was saying, I would like to see these people someday. And there you go, you came to Tanzania.
We really had the opportunity to just really become friends and brothers, especially through that COVID experience. But some of my joys, I was always fascinated to hear about what life was like in Tanzania and to hear what your family life was like. And but then I enjoyed kind of sharing some of just things that bring me joy and meaning in life with you. And food is one of those things. And so I started to understand some of Father Nestor's favorites. He loves Chinese food. We started having a tradition of having Buffalo Wild Wings every Tuesday night. Loves Lou Malnati's pizza in general. So I just loved sharing that with you because I know you enjoyed it. But then I love movies, and so I started sharing a lot of powerful movies because his sole experience of American cinema was Rambo and Schwarzenegger. So in Tanzania, so I loved sharing The Shawshank Redemption and Forrest Gump and so many just powerful films with him. And one of the funniest experiences is, and it's just because I grew up with a great love of theater. My parents shared that with me. And so Lori and I took Father Nestor and Father Benedict to see White Christmas in downtown Chicago. And when I bought the tickets, we weren't able to get 4 seats together, so we were seated in separate parts of the theater.
I remember that.
And so we went in the theater together, but then at intermission time, Lori and I are looking for Father Nestor and Father Benedict, and we can't find you anywhere. And so
We thought we were
intermission ends, and we go back in the theater. And so after the show, we connect, and they tell us, well, at the end of the first act, everybody applauded, and so we thought the show was over, so we went out to the street. And so then they realized eventually that the rest of the audience hadn't come outside, so maybe we need to go back inside, and they came back in and saw the second act of White Christmas.
Yeah.
And but I just love sharing that with you, and then when I had the opportunity to go to Tanzania, you shared so much of your life with me.
I want to remember the Blue Moon. And the Father Chris got me a ticket to the Blue Moon.
Yeah.
There, and it was just fun being among brother priests and sharing those moments and games. It's I remember those always.
Right.
And I share those with priests back in Tanzania, with my friends, my family. That sometimes you go out into another country and you meet people who don't know you, but they show you love, they treat you in a way that you just say, what is this? They put resources, they put time, like you did, like taking me out to restaurants, taking me out to movies. We went to the music concerts, you remember?
Right.
Those kind of things. And you're like, God, what is this? And so sometimes people are worried, but they don't know their brother is in safe hands, and being loved that much. It's just amazing how God works and how God brings right people at the right time. When you need them, they're right there. He may let it happen for a while to make you learn your lesson, like kind of, if I put it that way. And then he brings right people who takes care of you, and that's what God's providence is, actually. Yeah.
And I still marvel at God's providential hand being kind of all over this, because had I not been at St. Ray's, I never would have met the Spezia family. And then the Lori Spezia and the Spezia family was my conduit to you.
Yeah.
And your sisters had known the Spezia family. And so such a beautiful thing.
Yeah. God's plan is just special. Because when I met Lori Spezia in Tanzania, I never thought like she would mean anything to me in the future. But God brings Lori Spezia 2013 to just say, okay, Father Nestor, here is a person who I want you to meet because I have a plan with you in the future. And then later, 2017, 2018, Lori becomes a very important person. And whatever we are doing right now back in Tanzania, I want to track it back to that date when, and I think I should share this. Sister Afra, Lori Spezia supporting the convent with the borehole, the pump and all that, and then Sister Afra knowing that they will be coming. I was expecting her to do all the necessary planning, and she never did. So Lori and John are from Malawi at the park already. They call Afra. Afra is still in Njombe, has no car to pick them up. And then Afra comes to me and says, Father Nestor, you have to help me because I have people in the national park now, and this national park is like 250 kilometers away. I have to go like 200 and then 50 rough road, and you know the roads, they were there. And I'm like, Sister Afra, I'm not going. But again, I am here, I work in development, and tomorrow I'm driving the bishop to Dar es Salaam. So this doesn't seem like an idea. But because I didn't want to go, and I was like, tomorrow I'm traveling, I'm busy, I said, okay, why don't you talk with the bishop? If he says yes, then I will go. So she goes to the bishop, and the bishop was around that day, and then the bishop calls me like 5 minutes. He said, Father Nestor, where are you? I'm in the office. Get the keys and go take these people now, because they are working for our people. It's our responsibility, so go now. So if the bishop says, what do you do? Get the key, start driving, we get there midnight, and the rest is story. God was trying to say, you have got to meet this woman because she's going to be important in this plan. And that's how I look at God's plan and providence. It's sometimes you don't need a lot of faith. You just need some time to think about it, look back and say, okay, God's plan is perfect. So yeah, so the idea of the bishop sending me to America was to help the diocese become financially sustainable. And as you may know, our dioceses for many years have depended on donations. So he wanted me to come here, get a degree in business, and not necessarily a master's degree like it was later, but he wanted me to learn some business skills, go back home, and help manage those businesses become financially sustainable. So I came here studying and asking questions and writing papers in relation to that. And like at the end of 2020, I called the bishop to say, okay, do you still have the same plan? Because all the time we talked, he could say, hey, remember the mission, why you went there? And I would say, oh yeah, Bishop, I'm trying that. So I asked, I have some relationships here and I wanted to let them know what I'm going to do. So tell me, am I going to do the same thing? He says, call me in 5 days. So I did that. And then he says, I will put you in a parish, you are a priest first, and then you will work at the diocese. That's how I took it. So I go back home, we have a discussion, and he says, exactly what I told you, that's what you're going to do. A week before I report, he calls me and says, where are you? I'm saying, I am at my friend's parish. I says, I'm coming there. Then you know when the bishop is coming to you, maybe there's something. So he comes and says, I'm going to change your assignment. And that assignment is Inuka Rehabilitation Hospital. So I kind of was shocked a little bit because I already had my notes, like what I wanted to do at the parish, the things I wanted to start at the diocese. And so then I have to obey because obedience is part and parcel of our life as priests. So I go to the hospital, he comes the second day and he wanted to make sure that I understand his vision. And I could tell that he has a heart for people with disabilities. He explained and they asked me specifically, you cannot have your private business here. I know survival is difficult, but you cannot have that. Please don't do that. And then he said, if you wanted some enjoyment, you can have it here at the house. Put your time at the hospital. And I told the bishop, I said, I'm going to try my best. And then he said, we'll get you some allowance to survive, which is like $120 per month to survive. But I want you to put more time for the kids. Unfortunately, 3 days later, he's involved in an accident, and 2 weeks later, he dies. And I went to see him, and his heart was still with Inuka. He would say, I made you the pastor for people with disabilities. And that's a big responsibility. And then he comes again and says, Father Nestor, don't ever send a child back home because they have no money. And of course, as somebody who graduated from a business school, I'm like, how am I running the hospital? But I truly understand what he meant, that people who have needs, they should be taken care of by the church. And that's what he meant, and I had, of course, find ways how. And so, coming back to the friends here in America, they knew I was going to work in the hospital. So now I have this responsibility and I come back to them again and say, hey, help me with an outpatient clinic. This was our first move. And Hope for Tanzania since then has been in outpatient, it's dedication, it's equipment, the wall, the ambulance. And I can't comprehend that, like what has been done in a year. And again, if you talk of $150,000 here, it's difficult for somebody in Tanzania to just get it because this is more than 300 million. And so even when we were preparing the proposal, we were doubting, is this going to work? This is too much money. Is this going to work? Then at some point we say a prayer and say, okay, let's just send it. If they say no, we'll bring it down. When it came here, it was the other way around. We wanted the building, they said we'll equip it, we will do the fence, we'll give you the ambulance. And that was out of our minds. Then the next year we ask again, and these people are just here. And I can't stop thanking you, Father Brad, for the commitment, for the heart, for the time, the resources that you put into this, because it just means a lot. And you remember the bishop, what he said when we were dedicating the building, the universality of the church,
right,
and that we are all created in the image and likeness of God, and that we are brothers in Christ. It's just amazing when you see that in practice. Not only, sometimes we talk, but you don't see it in action. This one is not a talk, it's an action, like happening and saving life, and that brotherhood, that sisterhood, that universality of the church is just an amazing idea when you see it in practice. Yeah.
And it truly was incredible. You know, he went back to Tanzania in January of 2021, and in February of 2022, I'm over there for the dedication of the building that the parishioners at St. Peter and Paul had funded. And to see the hospital in operation for 3 weeks. And I remember meeting your friend, Father Bruno, who was there for the dedication, and he told me, you know, this is the population in Tanzania that we hide, children with disabilities. And so this is such an important work. Yeah. And Bishop Dimbo to say that this is true evidence of one Holy Catholic Apostolic Church. And I remember Father Tarcísio, who founded the Inuka Hospital, how he said, you know, I thought I was alone. Because he did that in what year was that?
He started 2008 and was ready to take in children 2010.
So 2010, the hospital received its first children to serve. But there had not been an investment at Inuka since then. And Father Tarcísio's advancing in age, he's in his 70s, and that question, like, is there somebody to pass this on to? Yeah. And it gave him such great hope. It gave your staff such great hope. Yeah. So it was a beautiful thing to witness.
Yeah, and so that's what we are trying to continue. And the name itself, Inuka, means rise up, take your mat and go. And that's our vision. We want to make sure that there are few occurrences of disability. And that's what we do every day with education. And then we want to say, okay, those who are already disabled, can we improve their life? Can we help them heal if possible? And so that's what we do. When they come, at least 4 times in a year, 1 week, whenever they come, we do an assessment. A group of professionals will come in. The MD, the physical therapist, the occupational therapist, speech, the counseling people, sit down, each one looking from their angle, and then coming up with a plan to help the child heal. And then we want to train, to teach them what is disability. And sometimes we have to go one-on-one, because sometimes you have 25, 30 kids in a week, and they have different problems. So sometimes we have one-on-one trying to help them understand why that disability, and then what can be done to help heal. And that's very important. First, of course, to teach the mothers understand, and understand the idea, the concept, and then the therapy. And then after that, we want to change their mindset, because most of them believe, I'm bewitched, witchcraft, and the culture doesn't value people with a disability. So we want to change that mindset, and we want to say, okay, there is dignity in these kids, and that they are the true image of God, and that we should give them that dignity. And if we have any, like if I put it like in a figurative language, a cake, then they should also get a piece. Not because they are locked into the house, they shouldn't get it. And so I think that is very important, and that is going to be a long-term war, if I can put it that way, because to change a culture is not something that you do in one day, and we keep doing that. And I think the staff are doing really well, and the commitment is really promising. And I believe with the number of patients we have seen in the calendar year 2022, around 29,000 patients, that tells me there is hope. We are reaching many people, and slowly they are understanding. And again, I have to get back to Hope for Tanzania and you, Father Brad. We just dream, you make it real. We want an outpatient dreaming. You guys fundraise here, send us the money, and we build buildings. We want equipment to improve our quality of service. You guys raise money, you give us. And I feel like indebted to work harder, because I have been here and I know how difficult it is to raise money here, and for people how hard they work so they can donate later. So I feel like I can't rest. I have got to make sure I get the value of each dollar that comes my way. And I want my staff to also understand that. So yeah, back in Tanzania, life is not like the way it is here. We had to walk in the morning 4 miles to get to school, and 4 miles later in the evening. And I remember it didn't happen to me because I ran to school. I wasn't given the permission to go, but I remember you would have to do that, be able to touch your other ear for the parents to determine that you are ready to go to school. Because if you can do that, that tells them that you can tolerate hunger, you know your way to school, and you can't be lost. If you struggle touching another ear, again, we don't have, in the villages especially, no birthdays. So parent would use that to be able to tell, just like the way we tell time. We're looking at the sun and saying, okay, if it's like that, that's 9. If it's here, that's noon. If it's that, then you know that's around 3. So that's how it was. So I go to school. I saw my friends passing by the farm where I was working with my mom, and I joined them because I know them from church. And my sister had already taught me how to write, so I knew how to write my name, the vowels. So I get to the school, and the teacher was like, okay, and who are you? Because I was new. I say my name, he gives me a chalk and says, go to the board and write. So I write my name, I put the vowels, I write my dad's name. And he was like, oh, okay, you are registered. So I go back home in the evening. Mom had been looking all day, like, where is this boy? So I get back home, and where did you go? I went to school. Who told you to go to school? I've been looking for you all day. And then later, our pastor, who was German, his name was Volker, and he would come to our school each month once for Mass. And that is special. And apart from Mass, he would come with a ball, soccer ball. And we had our soccer balls made of plastic, and they're heavy, especially during rain season. He would come with a nice soccer ball, soft, and you can hit it with joy, you know. So we would play with him, and then later he would ask, who wants to be a priest? And I would like, yeah, I want to, because in my mind as a 9, 10-year-old, if I become a priest, I'll be playing this ball, this nice ball, all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's how God got me into. And then he had a Land Rover, the only car in the area. So I was like, okay, if I become a priest, I have 2 things I get. The soccer ball and the Land Rover. So I was like, I'm in. So I take all the exams, I go to the seminary, and I'm, hey, the priests don't play soccer at the seminary. Not all do. Not all. We had only 1 car in the seminary. And I was like, okay, it sounds like these guys don't have cars, like I thought. And then slowly I start learning in the seminary about priesthood, and I grow, and here I am. I will maybe tie in with the life of a priest out in Africa and comparing to what I have seen here. In Africa, the life of a priest is kind of difficult, I would say, because there is no stipend at the end of the month. And so a priest has to finance his food and buy his clothes and his health, think about that, and sometimes maintaining the rectory. It's his job when you are in a parish. And so apart from pastoral work, sanctifying function, the preaching and the governing of a parish, you have got to find ways. Like farming, you need to have a farm and grow your own food. You need, probably the backyard needs to have some chickens, you know, some goats, some pigs. So if you have an emergency, you can get one and sell. So things like those. And that takes a lot of time, and so shortens the time that we spend with the parishioners. And sometimes when you have your private staff and the common good, sometimes you tend to go more to things that benefit me personally than the things that... and I think that's a challenge, and it's something that we have to work on, find solutions to that, so a priest devotes more time to pastoral work. That's how the life is, and especially it's even more challenging. Family life is more challenging when the family is polygamous, for example, like we used to be. And so mom takes more of the work, feeding, when you get sick, that makes it even more difficult. And so in my preaching, I always tell the young couples, don't go into that because it's challenging. It's not only sinful, but again, it's very challenging in terms of the responsibility of the family. And yeah.
Dichotomy of what you have in Tanzania in contrast to what we have here is just, I don't know how you integrated all of that into your life. I remember taking you to a pet store, and you said to me, we don't even have grocery stores in Tanzania this size. And I remember how some parishioners took you down to central Illinois, kind of the southern part of our diocese, and you went to a dairy farm and realized that the cows had air conditioning, and your parents got electricity in 2020. So it's just kind of mind-bending. And I think that's having the opportunity to travel to Tanzania and see the sense of family, the sense of community that exists. I was really graced to experience the liturgy, the Eucharist each day in the parish where we stayed, but then to go to an outstation church, to go to the cathedral, to go to a high school and celebrate Mass and realize just how alive the faith is. But that's such an important part of the life and the hope of the people there. But they really have so little. I mean, you've told us that 50% of the population in Tanzania lives on less than $2 a day. And so you have I remember a dear friend of mine took his son to Malawi when his son had just graduated 8th grade, and he came back and he said to me, Father, he said, they have nothing, but they have everything, because they really value their health, they value the life of their family, they value their God, and those are the important things that really matter. But I think in reference to our country, we seem to have rehabilitation centers in every shopping mall and shopping center, and to think that Inuka is the only dedicated rehabilitation center in Tanzania, a country of 68 million people, is just hard for me to fathom.
So I think the vision of Inuka remains very important, and I would want and pray to God that we have many people attracted into it and make this mission an ongoing concern. That's what I would say. I see children coming in motorcycles. I see adults coming on motorcycles because that's the only transport available in the village, and not many people, as you saw, have cars. And I think this mission is really going to people who really need, and that's where Jesus is found, the people who need. And sometimes I work and I am very tired, sometimes frustrated, but you go to sleep, you're happy because it's rewarding, it's satisfying to do what we do. And looking forward with a lot of hope because the doubts go down and down and down every day because of what has happened and what we have been able to achieve in the past 2 years.
So I had the opportunity to tell the children at Holy Family, where I'm currently assigned, about what life is like in Tanzania. And I think I had a teacher reach out to me and afterwards, and she said the kids were talking about it in the classroom afterwards. And I encouraged them. I said, Father Nestor is going to be coming to visit us, and he's going to be speaking in all the masses. And if you have the opportunity to make a gift, just know that it'll make a real difference there. Think of the blessings that you have here, and think about your peers, your classmates 8,000 miles away, and can you do something to make a difference for them? And it was shared with me that one of our children gave 39 cents, which is just such a beautiful thing, because it's all these gifts together that is making a difference. And I know the school children at St. Peter and Paul this past year had done an effort to raise funds for Inuka, and I think over $4,000 was was raised. Which again, it's all of the separate individuals, the children themselves, all coming together to make a difference, and what a difference it makes.
Unfortunately, I don't have the name at the top of my head. One family, the kids went to the parents and said, "Can you give us money so we can donate?" When I was here in December, "Can you give us money so we can donate to Father Nestor, so he can help our friends in Africa?" And they said, "No, you find your own money. You find your own money." And what they did, they went and drew pictures, and they were standing by the intersection at St. Peter and Paul, trying to market it and sell. And some guy bought the picture at $3, and they were able to come and hand the $3 to me. And that is just heartwarming and amazing, that the children of 3, 4, 5 years and can think that way and commit themselves to that level, and whatever they got, they never thought of ice cream or cookies or anything.
Right.
They came back and said, "Here is our donation for our brothers in Africa," and that means a lot to me, and I believe to everybody at home. Unfortunately, sometimes you don't tell these stories, all of them, like at home, but whenever I have an opportunity, I want to share with them that there are people who are really sacrificing for people they don't know, but it's only because of their faith, and that we are all children of God. That's why they are doing that.
Right.
Yeah. I think the idea of the culture in Tanzania is kind of different. The way we look at things, the way Americans look at things, and the way we look at things is kind of different, and that translates into actually different meanings depending on the foundation. And disability is something that our culture doesn't give that much value to people with a disability. There are some names, and that's why these days we encourage, you don't say you have got to start with a person with disability, a person, and that means a lot. So in Swahili we would say mtu mwenye ulemavu, so a person with disability. We want them to start like that, not a disabled.
Right.
A person with disability, to remind people that this is a person first. Disability is not an identity, a person first. And so I remember when I was in my first appointment, we had a teacher living next to us, our neighbor, a very good man and a good family. And he had a good family. We knew one son, and one day we were told he lost his son. And we went there because we don't have funeral homes, so we go there, make that whole, it's a community event. Men normally will make the whole, and women will clean and cook, things like that. And when we got there, the son that we knew was alive. So we were asking, who died? And we were told it's another son who had disability. And he was 14 years old, which means no one saw the child. Always locked into the house. Why? Because the culture looks at these kids as an embarrassment, as a disgrace, as a curse. And so this teacher, who is supposedly educated, probably expected to understand the science behind disability, but he did that because that's what the community in the villages think of children with disability. And so once the bishop came with an idea of disability, having a place for people with disability, I was like, I think I'm in, because I have an experience, I've seen this before. And the bishop was saying it very clearly. He said, for a long time, the church has not done enough for people with disabilities. We have got to find a place where these children will go and find hope, find love, find that dignity. And so that is what Inuka continues to do. It's a long-term fight between the change of mindset and the better life for people with disabilities, especially children who can't defend themselves. Maybe sometimes they can't speak. They can't even say, okay, I'm sick, this pains. They can't say. So we want to make sure our families, the culture understands that these are people. People with this. They just have some part of their body doesn't work normally, but they are people first. And that's very important.
It's critically important. I mean, the dignity of the human person, made in the image and likeness of God. And I'm just so grateful that Inuka exists to lift these children up and to have them be seen as persons with intrinsic value and needs that need to be addressed. It's a great work.
So again, apart from the challenges that we have, that the challenges don't bring us back. So sometimes, and you can't address all the problems. You remember our truck, right? Doesn't start, or the wheel goes off. But that doesn't take us back because of the challenges. We take those challenges as part of our journey towards helping this marginalized group find the joy, find that dignity. And I have seen, I went one time to visit Mariam at their home, and because he has hydrocephalus, epilepsy, and cerebral palsy, my interest was to see the development. I wanted her to walk, come to me. And her interest was not that. Her interest was a hug. Her interest was I lift her up. So I was saying, Mariam, walk. And she kept showing me the arms. Like, no, I want you to take me. So at some point I pick her up and I put her on my lap, and she was lying on my chest, happy and joyous, And that takes me to this other idea where we have seen a lot of women coming to the hospital and saying, my husband doesn't support me. My husband told me my family doesn't have a child with a disability. So go find a father. And we have a few examples of fathers who would come, maybe 5% at the hospital, who would come with a child, birth the child, feed the child, go to the therapy rooms, learn the therapy, and do that when they go back home. And for me, this is an example of real men. And we would want more men to understand where they stand, their contribution to the family, and that they are leaders of the family. And they should show that by example. That is my prayer, and that is what I am hoping, that at some point no man is going to run away and leave a child with the mother alone because this child has a disability. I'm hoping that men will understand that there is science behind disability and that they will be ready to be there. Even if they have nothing, even if they are poor, just that presence, that hug that Mariam wanted to get from me,
right.
The father should be there to give that. That's my prayer, and that's Inuka's vision. That's what we want to happen.